Hi everyone, I'm Troy, this is TM Fitness, and this is my whiteboard series. So continuing on the theme of nutrition and macronutrients, let's talk about fatty acids. I'm going to try and keep this as brief as I can because, quite frankly, it's a little bit boring. So fatty acids, or fats, they're very energy dense. They contain 9 kilocalories per gram of fat. They're pretty good for regulating hormone balance. They're also very important for the absorption and distribution of fat-soluble vitamins, that's A, E, K and D, which is why the recommendations when you're supplementing with vitamin D is to take it with food, because if you've got some fats in the diet, it will absorb it more completely. Simple, right? So the type of fatty acids, there's 3 basic types, okay? You've got your monounsaturated fatty acids, your polyunsaturated fatty acids, and your saturated fatty acids. The type is determined by the number of hydrogen cells bonded with carbon atoms, okay? So a monounsaturated fat will have 1 bond, polyunsaturated fats will have multiple bonds, and saturated fats, each carbon atom is literally saturated with hydrogen. Then of course there's the trans fatty acids. Some of these occur naturally in red meat in very small amounts, and they don't appear to have any ill effect on the body. The man-made trans fats, which occur in a lot of processed foods, particularly a lot of the like hydrogenated vegetable oils and the like, aren't so good for you. So if you have a diet that's high in processed foods and lots of fried foods and that kind of stuff, you're going to have quite a lot of trans fats in there. They're not really beneficial for you in any way, so try and cut that stuff out or minimize it as much as you can. So monounsaturated fatty acids and polyunsaturated fatty acids are essential. They're essential because you have to source them from food. Monounsaturated fatty acids include omega-9, which is largely found in olive oil and a few other plant-based foods. That's one of the reasons why the Mediterranean diet is considered to be so good for heart health, because omega-9 and olives and olive oil are very, very good for cardiovascular health. Polyunsaturated fatty acids are primarily your omega-6 and omega-3, and these are found usually in seeds and nuts and of course fish oils. Now both of these are important. Omega-6 is important and it's good for your health, and omega-3 is important and it's good for your health. The problem being that with a lot of modern diets and those previously mentioned highly processed, highly refined foods, there's going to be a much higher prevalence of omega-6 oils, particularly from those trans fats that I mentioned, and this creates an imbalance. So for optimal health, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 would be 4:1. Okay, some experts argue that it should be 1:1, and we have seen in some diets, for instance, with some of the Nordic populations and some of the Inuit populations, where they consume a lot of seafoods, lots of fish, whale blubber, that kind of stuff. They have a 1:4 ratio, so they have more omega-3 than omega-6, and they tend to have very low rates of heart disease and diabetes, although we're seeing increases in that among Inuits now due to higher amounts of processed Western foods. So if the ratio of 6:3 is 1:1, 4:1, or up to 1:4, that's pretty good. What we tend to find with typical Western diets is that ratio is anything from 12 to 25:1. Okay, so that's a ratio of 12 to 25 omega-6 to 1 omega-3. And this is part of the reason why it's often recommended that you supplement with omega-3 fish oils, particularly if you're not consuming a lot of fish on a weekly basis. The NHS recommend that you have a couple of portions of oily fish a week, and that may be fine if your diet is predominantly whole foods, lots of plant foods, lots of these nuts and seeds and pulses and whole grains. But if you're eating a much more processed diet, then that's not going to be enough on its own. My advice would be to sort your diet out rather than just adding in more supplements. When it comes to the amount of fatty acids, usually we would say sort of a minimum of around 25% of total calories coming from fatty acids. Bearing in mind that fatty acids are 9 calories per gram, so that's more than twice as many calories per gram of fats than there is per gram of carbohydrates and protein. So the total amount, although the percentage is quite high, the total amount in grams will be quite low. So for example, a 2,000 calorie diet, 25% of that is 500 calories. Divide that by 9, that's 55 grams. So if your maintenance level of calories is around 2,000, which is the general recommended guideline for, your generally active populations, they say 2,000 to 2,500. If you're having around 55 grams of fats a day, you're in that range. Fat oxidation will go up when you have a higher fat intake. Fat oxidation is the utilization, the burning, if you like, of the calories from those fatty acids to be used as energy. So it will naturally go up if you have a high fat diet, but all that means is you're burning off those fats that you've eaten for energy. It doesn't mean that it does not translate to fat loss in terms of body fat. Okay, so a ketogenic diet may have some benefits for certain medical purposes, but there is no metabolic advantage to a higher fat intake, the caveat being that it may increase satiety. So a very high fat diet may lead you to eat less food throughout the day, so therefore you automatically create an energy deficit, but weight loss will only happen if you're in an energy deficit. The metabolic advantage, when you look at the research, and this is coming from the ISSN recent position stance by Aragon, Schoenfeld and Wildman 2017. When you look at the literature, when protein is accounted for, so whether it's a low fat or a high fat diet, as long as protein is the same and the energy deficit is the same, there's no difference between a high fat or a low fat diet. Rather than going to one extreme or the next, you don't need to be high anything or low anything. Aim for around that 25% from fats, and you'll be getting plenty of fats to get all these health benefits that we talk about. If you have a preference for fatty foods, by all means, eat more fats, but that will mean that you'll have to eat less carbohydrates, which will mean, because fats are more than twice as energy dense as carbohydrates, you will be eating less volume of food. And if you're in a big energy deficit, if you're dieting down, that might not be a great thing because you're going to feel more hungry. Okay, I hope that's cleared up a few things about fatty acids. I said I was going to keep it brief. I think I've achieved that. If you've got any questions, put them in the box. Click like, click share, click subscribe. That's a really important one. Hit me up on Facebook, and I'll catch you later.